It goes without saying that the Dover Air Force Base is not only important to our community and our state, but also to our nation. At Delaware Tech, we're very proud to consider ourselves one of the more active partners of the base as we've conducted training on-site for employees and families. We volunteered and supported events like Military Appreciation Day, and many of our college leaders have been honorary commanders over the years, and we also volunteer at each other's events and participate in Patriot Day and Veterans Day events. As an institution that's been recognized for the last 5 years as a military-friendly college because of the way we support our students and their families, this is something we're very, very proud of. And I want to thank retired Major General Frank Vavala, who's on site this morning. General, thank you. He's one of our veterans advocates on site here as part of the Delaware Tech team, and we're proud of how we support our student veterans. We are proud to host all of you from the Dover Air Force Base, Colonel, and your senior team. Thank you very much for being here, and as I said to you, our doors are always open. During these past 6 to 8 months, we have provided this type of space for everything from training opportunities for local healthcare organizations to the Delaware National Guard to testing in our parking lots and partnering with the food bank. Obviously, as the Dover Air Force Base, you're always welcome here, so please let us know how we can help. We're very proud to provide this forum and learn about this critical state, local, national, and global defense asset located right here in our community this morning, so thank you for being here. Speaking of leadership, I would be remiss if I didn't extend a special welcome and thank you to our congressional delegation who are in the House. I know our Congresswoman is unable to be here, but you know, I just have to say this, when most people call the Dream Team, they're thinking of the 1992 men's Olympic basketball team. At Delaware Tech, we think of the team of Senator Carper, Senator Coons, and Congresswoman Blunt-Rochester. Nationally, they are considered leaders among leaders. They're working on everything from climate change and a stronger economy to providing health care and social justice for all Americans. And as important, they bring resources home here to Delaware that create jobs, improve educational opportunities, and as we will soon hear, keep our state and nation safe. So thank you again for being here and for all you do for our state and our country. Before I turn the podium over, I would just like to extend on behalf of everyone here at Delaware Tech, each and every one of you and those of you who are joining us virtually, our best wishes for a safe, healthy, and happy Thanksgiving weekend. At this time, I will turn the program over to Evans Armentrading, the Vice Chair of the Military Affairs Committee of the Central Delaware Chamber of Commerce, who will start our program by recognizing today's event sponsors. Evans.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Brainard, and all of Del Tech, one, for just hosting this, allowing us to host this event here, which is pretty awesome, and as well as to all the people that help serve to make this event happen today. Typically, we do this at Dover Air Force Base, and we're excited to be able to do this next year as well, Colonel Jones. But as many of you already know, Dover Air Force Base and the Dover community have a very special relationship. We call it Team Dover. We have a very unique relationship. As I've talked to other people who've traveled throughout the country or have served in different areas, many of them who've served here have coveted the relationship that they've had with the community here that we don't really see in other areas throughout the nation. So it's a great example of what the base and the community do together in this partnership. I'd like to also take this time to thank our sponsors today, our signature sponsors, Del Tech Community College, as well as Fireside Partners. Our general sponsors, the Air Force Association Galaxy Chapter, C.S. Kidner and Associates, Capital Strategies, Seal Jones Realtor, CNU Fit, Delmarva Veteran Builders, Dover Behavioral Health Systems, FSNB or Fort Sill National Bank, Landmark Science Engineering, Leander Lakes, Tidewater Utilities Incorporated, as well as Wilmington University. And our platinum sponsor, Axia Management Group, Century Engineering, Chesapeake Utilities, Dover Federal Credit Union, Harrington Raceway and Casino, Kraft Heinz and Company, L&W Insurance, PAM Rehabilitation Hospital of Dover, as well as R&R Commercial Realty. So I just want to say thank you guys for your sponsorship to help make this event happen today. At this time, please stand and join me for our Pledge of Allegiance. The flag's right here, so we just turn. So, hand on your heart. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Thank you. You may be seated. I'd also like to take this moment real quick to recognize our dignitaries. I know that Dr. Brainard recognized them a little earlier, but if you can just do a wave when I say your name, and we're excited to hear from you a little bit later. But first is U.S. Senator Tom Carper. U.S. Senator Chris Coons. The Mayor of Dover, the City of Dover, Robin Christensen. City Councilman Bill Hare. We also have attending with us State Auditor Kathleen McGinnis. Dr. Tony Allen. I don't think he's here yet, so forgive me on that. He's the president of Del State University, as well as retired General Frank Favalo, representing. Nice. Now I'd like to give you guys some information about our Central Delaware Chamber of Commerce Military Affairs Committee. It's a volunteer group. We meet quarterly. It's made up of representatives all throughout the community, as well as Dover Air Force Base. We're committed to Team Dover. They work continually to strengthen the relationships between our military and our communities by offering them all the support possible to complete the mission. You know, we are part of Team Dover, you know. Throughout the year, this committee hosts 3 major events. The first, which is we're attending today, the State of the Base briefing. The second is the military affairs get-together. It's going to be in the beginning of 2021, and that's going to be more of a networking. We'll figure out how to do that, but that'll be more of a networking type of event. And the third event is our Blue Suiters Golf Tournament scheduled for May 2020. You know, this committee takes great pride in supporting the men and women of Dover Air Force Base through a variety of sponsorship programs, including sponsoring airmen for different events. I mean, typically in a non-COVID world, we'd even do like adopt an airman during this season to allow, you know, some airmen who are staying here locally to have a home environment throughout the holidays. You know, so very, very committed to supporting the community. If anyone's interested in learning more about the Chamber's Military Affairs Committee, please call the Chamber office or contact myself at another time. Now it's my distinguished honor to formally introduce our very own Colonel Matthew E. Jones, the commander of the 436 Airlift Wing at Dover Air Force Base. He's responsible for a combined fleet of C-5M Galaxy and C-17A Global Master. These aircraft provide a world movement of high priority of personnel and cargo. Dover Air Force Base is the home of the Air Force Mortuary Affairs, Armed Forces Medical Examiner System, and the Joint Personnel's Effects Depot, the Department of Defense's largest airport, and the Air Mobility Command Museum. Colonel Jones' career highlights include being the first Air Force Chief of Staff Intermediate Development Education Scholar at Harvard, and several tours of duty in the Pentagon, at the Air Force and Defense Secretary levels. He's a command pilot with more than 2,000 flights in the T-37, T-1A, and several other variations of the C-5. As a special note, we'd like to thank Colonel Jones for leading the team safely through this COVID pandemic. You know, we've watched him become very agile during this season and adapt and adjust and overcome, you know, to help all the airmen stay safe and continue to enjoy their life and their journey as airmen. So please help me welcome our wing commander, Colonel Matthew Jones.
Thank you very much, Evans. And I like kind of that message of agility. It's going to be part of our presentation this morning. I too just wanted to send out a couple of welcomes. I think I have to go first with my wife sitting in the front row. Our entire leadership team, at least at the colonel level, are here with us. We know how honored we are just to be in the state of Delaware, but every single time we get the entire delegation. We received a note this morning that Representative Blunt Rochester was here with us in spirit and probably here with us physically on the virtual environment. But Senator Carper, Senator Coons, nice to see you, and thank you very much. When we decided that we needed to space out and we could do this in a hangar, but would present some unique challenges, and we call this thing Team Dover, it was only perfect that Deltec stepped in. So Mark, sir, thank you very much. I see the mayor with us, councilmen, representatives from the state, general, all of you, welcome very much. So a lot of us in this room are very familiar with Dover Air Force Base, but for those that are not, your exposure might just be driving on Highway 1, seeing the planes taking off. And so what we thought we would do to kick off the morning is give you a greater glimpse as to what happens inside the gate. So we have a short video.
Welcome to Dover Air Force Base, home to 11,000 airmen and their families serving within the 436 Airlift Eagle Wing and its 4 mission partners. The 512th Airlift Wing, known as the Liberty Wing, consists of reserve members from 38 different states and 4 overseas countries who serve alongside their active duty counterparts and remain ready to activate when called upon by our nation. In addition, the Armed Forces Medical Examiner System, Air Force Mortuary Affairs Operations, and Joint Personal Effects Depot nobly carry out our nation's duty to honor those who have fallen.
Rotate.
From our location here in the heart of Delaware, we generate 20% of the Air Force's strategic airlift using the C-5 Super Galaxy and the C-17 Globemaster III. Generating this lift is a team effort where thousands of airmen work daily to realize our mission's end goal. Our mission starts with the 436 Maintenance Group. The dedicated crew chief is responsible for all maintenance on their assigned aircraft, and there is a lot to maintain. They rely on a number of other offices to keep the aircraft ready, from the C-5 isokernel inspection dock that accomplishes 2,300 maintenance functions over 57 days, to the Superport, the Department of Defense's largest aerial port, which moves 50,000 tons of cargo and 10,000 passengers a year. Aircraft aren't the only thing the Dover sends around the world to do our nation's business. Combat-ready airmen deploy to various combatant commands. The Warfighter Clinic at the 436 Medical Group is one of the first stops for all deployers leaving from Dover Air Force Base. Deployers will also visit the Combat Arms Training and Maintenance Section, a part of the Mission Support Group, to train and certify on their service weapons. Our deployers know their mission is well supported, but airmen need more than maintenance, medical, and combat skills. They also need unrivaled installation support, whether that's the money funding the mission or the networks that connect us across the globe. Sometimes they need legal advice, a spokesperson, or someone to help them through a conflict. That's where the wing staff agencies come in, to take care of our airmen's most sensitive matters. Dover Air Force Base is also home to a very sacred mission, bringing home those that made the ultimate sacrifice. Our mission partners specialize in returning fallen service members and their belongings home with dignity, honor, and respect, while providing care, service, and support to their families. From the creation of a mission to the launch of an aircraft, to every step in between, the men and women of Dover Air Force Base work every day to deliver rapid global airlift, anytime, anywhere our nation requires. Powered by airmen, fueled by commitment. This is Team Dover.
By Sergeant Beckley, who's in the back, and I think it's just an awesome kind of contemporary video. You'll notice throughout our presentation today that in many of the pictures we're wearing face coverings, which has been our new reality. I'll ask that you rest assured if you see a picture where someone is not wearing a face covering. Fortunately, part of this last year in review was before the pandemic began, so you'll have to trust us with that. But you saw all those airmen on base doing wonderful things, and I'd like to spend just a moment here introducing you to their leaders. And so in my front office staff, we have our Command Chief, Shay G, and Colonel Anderson is the Vice. Chief G just got a promotion. She's going to be headed to a base that hosts 2 combatant commands, and so she's at a higher tier of leadership, and this is Colonel Anderson's first state of the base. But for both of us, we also want to highlight up on the screen our families that we're so appreciative of. Sorry, honey. But I do want to take the chance next just to introduce our group command teams. And so first in the operations group is Colonel Peeler here for us in the second year. I like this picture. He's working with an Israeli general as part of our foreign military sales program. He goes by Tater, as a matter of fact. Perfect. Our largest group on base is the maintenance group. Colonel Chris May leads this group. I know he's got a soft spot in his heart right now as he winds down his career, but this picture is perfect. I know how much time he loves spending time with airmen. And we have 3 new leaders in the wing. The first is Colonel Philemon Williams, leading our most diverse and complicated mission support group. P-Will, thank you very much for being here. And then we have a new medical group commander. And you say, oh, just a medical group commander, the smallest group. Her group has taken on new meeting this year, and a lot of the ingenuity and creativity has come out. So Tracy, welcome to you as well. Then this next one we didn't have last year. We always had a function called the Director of Staff, but we would put in a pilot and they would take some time away from flying and they would fill this role. The Air Force decided to fund this position permanently and make it a civilian. And so retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Craig Lindstrom jumps in as our first Director of Staff, and we think that's going to give us some continuity in this position. So certainly a welcome to all those team. We are going to get a chance to hear from our mission partners throughout the base in person. I will hand over the microphone to them in a bit, but I wanted to just kind of refer to them as our own dream team right up front. Colonel Haynes is unable to make it today, so he'll be represented by Colonel Mike DeSantis. You'll see a new face in Colonel Alice Briones, the director of our medical examiner, another history maker, not just as the first airman leading that organization, but the first female as well. So this next picture is one that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. Those are all those folks I just introduced in the blue, and all of their chief master sergeants in the red. And you ask, where are you guys playing G.I. Joe out there in the elements? But I think we're going to spend the rest of this presentation talking about why the conflicts that we might face in the future are going to be potentially nothing like what we faced in the last 2 decades looking backwards. And so this is our kind of our transition. But before we do that, I think we just need to spend a couple minutes looking at strategy to frame that problem set. And so 2 years ago, Secretary Mattis unveiled the National Defense Strategy and was really kind of a pivotal document on where things are going. And in there was an acknowledgement that our competitive and comparative advantage have been eroding. We're also saying that our wars of the future will be less likely to be focused on violent extremist organizations or terrorism, and it will be a pivot where they're more near-peer adversaries. And then lastly, the document talked about that if we don't modernize, we will lose that advantage. And so that's the military side of this. If you just look at the US economy in terms of GDP, some of the same signs are there as well. As you look at this chart, it's a fascinating look over 2,000 years. United States is represented in blue on the bottom, and you can see our roaring GDP there post World War II, and where it kind of leveled off for a while. And you can see us in a gradual decline beginning in the 2000s. What's most notable in there is as we have declined as a percentage of gross domestic product, China has risen. And so if you combine those two things and you fast forward to just this year, there was another document that hits very close to home for us in the Air Force. Another significant event, we have a new Chief of Staff of the Air Force, our first African-American Chief of Staff. But on day one, he unveiled this document that was an acknowledgement that if we do not only change, but not accelerate this change, for the first time he said the words, we risk losing. And really quite significant just to hear that. And so we need to change the way that we train. We need to change the way that we prepare. And every bit of the rest of this presentation is going to say that Dover is not only in a good place to do that, but we have begun. And we're starting to have some things that will show that we're getting there. But the first one is if you're going to do that right, you have to take care of the infrastructure, you have to take care of the airmen, and you have to take care of their families. So let me just speak for a quick moment on housing and some of our military construction. In housing, for the last 2 years, we have had some challenges in mold. I am pleased to report that after a couple years of challenges, and our privatized company, Hunt Housing, put in over $1 million and really very active engagement, not only the airmen and the residents that live here, but along with their leadership, that we're in a better place for some of that mold. We still have some ongoing challenges in the fire suppression systems of those houses, and just in the last couple of weeks, we've made some good progress there. Where I have real significant optimism in this area is that part of the Bill of Rights for these residents included a new resident advocate. So seen on the screen now is Mr. Aaron Lewis, who is in the seat, and we now have a resident advisory council. His entire job when he comes to work is to be the advocate for those that live in that housing, and he is off to a fantastic start. As I shift gears a little bit into our other area, and it would be water contamination. There's an acronym that I can't pronounce, so we just call it PFAS and PFOA, but we get nowhere as a military if we not only can't keep our families safe from something as fundamental as the water you drink, but also those in the community. And I will tell you that Dover is no exception. These chemicals originally, we believe, got into water from firefighting agents to include the military's use of those agents. Dover's not exempt from that. But where we think we are and will continue to lead the way is going to be in our reaction to that and how proactive we are. You see in this picture, Joe Kowalski from the Air Force Civil Engineer Center. We are committed to not only be the most transparent and proactive, but that when we find an area or a well that exceeds the lifetime health advisory, we will, within a day, provide bottled water. Following that, we will install a filtration system for the water, and we will ultimately partner with the city to get these families off of well water and onto municipal water. And so those seem like negatives, but I think it's really important to be transparent in our role in that. Now, if we talk about construction, you can see a little bit of progress here on our school. They are working hard, rain or shine, and I'm pleased to report that they are now over 30% complete, and this is a current shot where it's really starting to take some vertical structure, and the school opens in August of 2022. Most of you were here earlier this year when we got a chance to cut the ribbon on our new military hangar, a decade where this has been the base's #1 military construction project, and we got to cut it. And so not a lot of vertical development on this project, but it is on track. You can see here everybody out there on that lovely day. And then just a little update on where it's fenced in. The hangar is set to open in May of 2022. I wanted to highlight 2 other military construction projects that we have our eye on in the future. The first is more hangars. When you think about wars of tomorrow and these giant aircraft, we lose several days every month because of the weather, the temperatures, or the wind. And so as soon as we took a decade to get this hangar to break ground on it, we're already looking after another complex. And if you look at the first, this is going to be in 3 phases. If you look at the first of those 3 phases, one of ours has already risen to the number 10 in all of Air Mobility Command in terms of their priorities. So we're optimistic there. We're even more optimistic that we'll get a new dormitory, because our dormitory project is the number 4 project in all of Air Mobility Command. And if you want to talk about taking care of airmen and how important that is. Okay, so let me pivot real quickly here and say that if we're going to change the way we fight as a nation and as a military, then we need to change the way that we train. And so in a very interesting meeting, almost just over a year ago today, we said, what we're doing is probably not working. We are embracing this new defense strategy, but we haven't actually changed our actions. And I physically sat down with the group commanders and said, what would it take for us to really get after this? And they said, sir, if we can have a chunk of money and a blank sheet of paper and we can build our own thing, we'll do that. And that is where TALN was born. Tactics and Leadership Nexus. This course is like nothing else that's out there in the Air Force. And from really thought to reality, it was built. During the heart of COVID, while everyone else was running home to take care of one another, airmen out of our civil engineering squadron began to build it themselves. You can see the construction here. This course, first of all, is trying to change kind of a warrior's ethos and a warrior's mindset. But just as importantly, it's there to exercise the mind. And there is an obstacle course that those who get through it best may not be the tallest, the strongest with a background in special forces, but it might be their critical thinking. And so the day starts off after some academics as you go through this mental obstacle course. But immediately thereafter, we change and we go into some chemical training. And the whole focus of this course is to train with the gear that we're going to need to deploy with in combat. And so the first part of this is as you wear your gear, we actually expose folks to an irritating agent. But your eyes don't water or anything else because your gear works and you have confidence. Speaking of the realism, we then go into some self-aid buddy care training, but we've purchased some sophisticated mannequins. And as you apply your first aid or your self-aid buddy care, you know it works because the mannequins actually have fluids kind of coming out of them. And as you apply the tourniquet just the right amount, the fluids will stop. It doesn't end there. When we get into the kind of the combatives section of training, we issue every airman the same weapon that they would use as they deploy in combat. And in doing so, they're shooting these non-lethal rounds that hurt and give you the feedback, but you also have the confidence on something as simple as how to clear your weapon when it might jam. And so we're really excited. We've already done 12 courses of TALN, and we think there are many other bases that are going to follow suit. Okay, the next part of this, though, is if you're going to change, sometimes you need kind of a capital for that, or you need a place to foster that change. And so we've been working on another project that we cut the ribbon on this year, and we call it BEDROCK. BEDROCK is our innovation lab, and it is open for business as well. Our innovation lab has a lot of the things that you would find normal in innovation labs all over the country. 3D printing you're seeing here. Virtual reality is certainly a part of ours. But where we're really going to make a mark in our innovation lab is in some different areas. And so one of them is we have the Air Force's most successful podcast. And you're seeing here a picture of our podcast studio where we already have over 20 episodes underneath our belt. The real emphasis on the work that we did there, though, was creating a collaborative space and a place where airmen can have a venue. And so you see kind of the venue here. Here's part of the collaboration. In the back of this room, we've carved out a section for our Key Spouse program. And so when they get together, they can have a place to meet. But most importantly is this has more the look of a Google than it does of a military place. And so it's an environment where not the highest rank on your shoulder will win the day, but those who have the best ideas. You can see some other pictures here. But all this is interesting because we've been asked in that National Defense Strategy, how can we do our military mission in a degraded, disrupted environment? Well, if only I could think of something that happened this year that degraded the environment that we're in. And so we got the opportunity to work through COVID to see if we can really operate in this degraded environment. And I'll spend about 10 or 15 charts here going through how successful that has been for us. So we've done things like a lot of us. We've had to meet virtually, as we are now, on Zoom. Things we cherish so much, annual parades still happened. And when graduations were difficult, we found a way to still make them happen for our children and those that matter most. You will see that as anyone came onto the installation for a while, we had to basically see if they were okay for COVID. And ultimately, if they presented any symptoms at all, they got a test right at the gate. Our pharmacy comes into contact with those that are of the greatest risk. And so we decided to move our pharmacy outdoors, and right now everyone gets their medicine, and that continues today through their vehicle. We have a world-class testing capability and a rapid test that we can get results in less than an hour on base alone. And when the Air Force said, we don't know how we're going to get folks deployed, Dover was the first base that they said, they will all aggregate at Dover Air Force Base and head on out on their way. And then there was a dilemma of how do you transport patients who are positive of COVID? So the Air Force and the United States Transportation Command came up with a transportation isolation system, kind of a very quick to market, rudimentary device that goes onto our C-17s. And then they said, how can we do it better? And they built a negatively pressurized Connex that you can see here. Both of those missions we host out of Dover Air Force Base. And then lastly, in this particular area, they said, what if we could disinfect the volume of a large aircraft? And they brought in, you can see here, heat, where they blow in humidity and hot air to kill the virus. All that happened at Dover Air Force Base. But really kind of the defining moment was, if you're gonna go to big war in the future, how do we know that you're truly ready? Do you have the capability to generate every single plane on the base? And so here's a picture of our flight line. And yes, we not only had a pandemic, but let's see if we could throw a tornado on top of it. Maybe the biggest tornado that the base has had in years. And in doing so, we had to physically evacuate every single airplane during a pandemic. And if you want to know if we did it, take a look. A real testament to our generators and the maintenance group, but really to the entire base. What a message that sends, that during a pandemic, we can launch the entire fleet. Okay, I think now I'm going to hand it over to our mission partners and let them take the microphone to talk about their organizations, and then I'll come back on stage to wrap it up with a couple points at the very end. But it's my pleasure to introduce Mike DeSantis. He is acting on behalf today of Colonel Greg Haynes, their wing commander. And I will just say the 512th and the 436 Airlift Wing this year have become more integrated than ever. Just in the last month, we merged our Inspector General, our IG shops, and we share that. So without further ado, Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Colonel Jones. Distinguished guests, senators, Team Dover. It's my pleasure to be here today. I'll try to keep it to what wasn't already presented on the video. So the 512th is a family of about 1,600 reservists. As you can see, it's kind of by exception what states we're not from. This has presented some unique challenges during the COVID pandemic, just with travel restrictions and quarantining rules and laws. But we've prosecuted the mission just fine. One of the historical firsts for the reserve is that we've been doing virtual UTAs. These are UTAs where we allow all of our reservists to basically do online training over the computer and other skills training online. We're actually getting ready to do another one of those in December here due to the recent outbreak. Like the video mentioned, we remain ready to answer the nation's call 365 days a year. One of the examples is 770 reserve medical workers were deployed to New York City during last spring's peak crisis there in the big city. As far as community partnership, we are absolutely grateful to be part of this vibrant community, proud to contribute where we can. I know coming up this summer, we have the Central Delaware Partnership for Hope. I believe that's 29 July to 12 August, so we're excited about that. They just had a site visit here last week for that. Next summer, the Army National Guard is scheduled to lead a team of Army, Air Force, and Marine Corps in providing no-cost health care to those in need, which is fabulous. That's been about 2 years in the making, and one of our very own, Major John Rundle, was pivotal in introducing that innovative readiness training process. So absolutely an enormous win-win for the Department of Defense. So we'll get very valuable military training and also obviously benefit the American community in the process. So we pretty much mirror the mission of the 436. I would say there's one significant difference. We also have a contingency response squadron, the 512 CRS. So their unique mission is to basically be able to go anywhere in the world in 72 hours and set up a bare bones base in preparation to receive follow-on airlift. All right, I think that hits the highlights. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Colonel Brian Eddy. He is the leader of one of our most sacred and unique missions here at Dover Air Force Base. Over to you, Ed.
Thanks. Thanks, Mike. Senators, thanks for joining us this morning. To Delaware and Dover, thank you. Thank you for your support. We can't do our mission without our partnership from the 436th to 512th, JPED and AFMEs, but we absolutely can't do it without Delaware and Dover. The folks that we have, whether it's in the USO or the Friends of the Fallen, make it a real opportunity for us to meet our mission because we just don't have enough folks to do so. We have about 100 people in which to execute our mission. And our mission has changed just a little bit during COVID. As you would expect, we still receive fallen from overseas locations, but we are now receiving stateside cases as well. And that's due to the inability of AFMEs to actually travel and get out and do their requirements. So in partnership, we have worked with our partners in Kalita to actually transport fallen members here from stateside locations as far away as California or even in Mexico City. So it is not uncommon, unfortunately, to now see CONUS fallen come through our doors. Now, I talked a little bit about our partnership, and it gives me a great pleasure to announce a true pioneer, as Colonel Jones talked about, the first female director for AFMEs, but more importantly, the first airman to direct AFMEs. So with that, I'd like to turn over the mic to Alice Briones.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, senators, senior leaders, community leaders, Colonel Jones, 436 leadership. Thank you so much for the support. As previously mirrored by our partners, none of this would have been possible pre-pandemic, during the pandemic. The duty that we take seriously at AFMEs for our service to the families of the fallen. Colonel Jones, we've had continued support since I've been here, many moons on the base, recently a change in my position, but all the leaders, whether it's odd flight times, which we're all very used to, the support of our mission partners, Colonel Eddy, Major Johnson, and all of the base, the Med Group commanders, we've been working very closely with you, everybody in the community. It doesn't happen without Team Dover. Our response to the community is the same as already been mirrored. We are the only federal level medical examiner system. There are many agencies we work with at the federal level. And we have about 49 active duty members, 52 civilians, and a unique part of our population is about 175 contractors, which you may be familiar with in support of our accredited laboratories, both toxicology and the DNA lab, which I know Colonel Jones is very familiar with, our link with DPA, as well as our ability to identify the fallen and current day cases. This is huge because of the support the community has provided. We have a 4.5 MILCON project that has just been approved with your support for a new warehouse. I believe January is when we're supposed to be breaking ground, subject to plus or minus change, of course. Semper Gumby with these things, of course, but we are so thankful for that because with that goes the ability to expand our DNA repository, which, as you know, is key, how we have those cards for the support of our finding our fallen. So I want to just thank the community and all the support we've given. We have many people who want to volunteer and continue to support, whether it's through the races like the Monster Mash, which I know is more virtual this year, and other ideas. We could not have it done without everybody's support here. But with that, we work very closely with our partners, Colonel Eddy, as previously mentioned, FMAO, through your support with Transcom, getting the remains of the fallen here as our medical examiners are limited in travel. But also, we have a very close link with Major Johnson's group at the JPED, and I personally appreciate the support. We've recently had some incidents where she and I have been very intimately involved in speaking with family members and gotten a lot of feedback from the services, but we couldn't do it without that. So with that, I'd like to introduce Major Johnson. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, Senators, distinguished guests. Colonel Jones, thank you for this opportunity to speak to the group this morning. I am Major Devaney Johnson, and if you can't tell by the difference in uniform, I am Army. But that is a unique and wonderful thing, an opportunity to be the Army contingent on Dover Air Force Base with Team Dover. Like everyone who spoke before me, couldn't do it without our mission partners. One thing for the Joint Personal Effects Depot, also known as the JPED, interoperability, agility, flexibility, and the ability to reach across to our mission partners is essential to our success. What we do at the JPED is we process the personal effects of all service members coming from theater that unfortunately pass away. So the deceased have that dignity and honor and respect that we are entrusted to take care of for their family members. We take each personal effect, we process it, and I have an amazing team of military, civilian, and contractors that do that. One highlight is, even though we have been affected by COVID as well, we continue to socially distance, take care of these items for the families, and we processed over 11,173 pieces of personal effects. And what that means to you is our mission doesn't stop, and neither do our hearts and our care and concern. I would be remiss if I didn't say, without Colonel Eddie's team leading the charge when the dignified transfers come through, my Army LNOs are embedded there, and they look to him for leadership and guidance as we work together to take care of our fallen. And then with the personal effects, we also coordinate with Colonel Brione's team to make sure that anything that is on the service member when they arrive, we focus on that. We talk closely between the three entities. We work hard to take care of families, and it's essential for us to maintain these partnerships. So we're eternally grateful for those opportunities. A little bit about us. We mostly have Army personnel that process, but in the past we have had Air Force, Marine, and even Navy. So our ability to talk with other services and continue to learn those lessons has made it possible for us to continue to be a learning organization, which is key. So with that being said, I want to say that the JPED is honored, privileged to be here at Team Dover, and we appreciate any opportunity to continue to serve families of the fallen. And with that being said, I will turn it back over to Colonel Jones, and thank you, sir, for this opportunity.
You bet. Here, they'll head it over to here. So those organizations might be our mission partners, but without a shadow of a doubt, they're what makes Dover Air Force Base a national treasure. There's just no way around it. I've got two last topics before I get off the stage and hand it back over to Evan. The first is going to be building on this theme of Team Dover and partnerships. Well, I want to focus a little bit on the community. Here's us doing some firefighter training with folks downtown. This has been a tough year for our civic leader program and our honorary commanders. And so we were able to sneak in this event right before COVID happened, but I want to let all of our honorary commanders know that we're thinking of you, and we'll still find ways to stay connected one way or the other. We were able to partner up with the Guard as some deployers were coming back home, and the governor came out to greet them, and so we were happy to be able to support that. As we started to realize that drones are not only a capability for us, they could become a threat to our base, and we didn't have all the authorities and the capabilities to work on those, we were able to partner with the Civil Air Patrol, and they were able to do some training with us. And then I'm going to highlight here at the end our civic leaders. And so we are fortunate to have an Air Force civic leader. Many bases don't have one that represents the United States Air Force, and we're fortunate to have Mike Tatoyan. As you can see up here on the slide, he was Comcast's Community Champion of the Year. Along with that came a cash prize of $60,000, and 100% of that he gave to the Delaware USO. And so just an awesome member. And that's at the Air Force level. But we also have two civic leaders at the Air Mobility Command level. The first is Bobby Pancake, and not to be outdone, just last month I think he was recognized of over 900 franchisees as the Franchise of the Year for what he does. And the theme for all of these individual accomplishments are not just what they do for their company, but their partnerships with the base. He owns High Five Hospitality, and Lori works with him, and she was recognized just after last year's State of the Base as one of the top 50 women in business for Delaware, and so I wanted to highlight each of them. And then very briefly, I don't think Del State was able to make it, but we had a conversation during Representative Blunt Rochester's visit with the chair of the House Armed Service Committee, and we were in a bus, and he just said, we were just brainstorming on things we could work on. And I said, hey, did you know we have just down the road HBCU? Did you know that they have an aviation program that the entire country is trying to recruit these underrepresented populations, and we have an Air Force base. There's all four of those things make Dover Air Force Base and the Delaware community unique. And he said, let me get back home and see what we can do in the National Defense Authorization Act. And as you look at this picture here, we are hopefully will soon have what's now known as the Flight Act that just started in a conversation. I put that in the slide during our community partnerships because you won't see it anywhere else, as a conversation in just 6 months is so close to becoming a reality. Okay, I'm gonna shift gears real quickly and end on the subject of what the country's going through in race and diversity and inclusion. This quote is from our former Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Goldfein, and he talks about diversity as a war-fighting imperative. And let me tell you how we embrace that here locally. Can you imagine going to war, willing to put your life on the line, and having that brother or sister on your left or on your right, and you were to discriminate against them? You were to assault them? It is so incompatible with what we do. When we try to solve the world's hardest problems, you need backgrounds from all across different walks of life to be a part of that. And that's why we think it's a war-fighting imperative. If you take yourself back to May, when the George Floyd murder happened, and the entire country, and I don't know why, there have been many murders that were like that have happened in the past, but this one somehow started a real conversation. And it happened here locally as well. And I think our observation locally was that it is no longer good enough to you, yourself, not be racist. That's not good enough, that you have to take some sort of action. And so what did we do here locally? We took a pause. This happened to be the week of the tornado, but we took a pause during the week of August to allow airmen to participate and to get their voices out there. We had 9 different committees. I can't tell you, half of the benefit of this week was just the planning of the week itself. As the week began, we started to have real conversations. Most of them were taped, and some of them were done on stage so other people could hear folks from different backgrounds. Some just wanted to march. And so we had an event where we got together against racism. We called it Ruck Racism, and this was done on base. We hired a facilitator so that airmen would have some training on how to facilitate these hard conversations moving forward, and that happened as well. And you're starting to see the intersection of the lab we built and the innovation lab and the venue and a lot of these things that come together. We gave airmen a way to express themselves through photography. And over 250 airmen took us up on that offer and wrote down on a piece of paper something, in most cases, something positive that was on their mind, something unifying. We had over 10 TED Talks where airmen from different backgrounds came in and shared their personal story. And then I'll say something positive here. This is a picture of our mission support group, and this is their wall of chain of command. And while we have a lot to go in diversity and inclusion, at Dover Air Force Base, I think this is our best example of where we're already at. Just at the top of that organization, I see a civilian leader. I see an African American. I see someone that may not share the same sexual orientation that you have. And when you get down into the squadron commanders, that diversity branches out into different genders and so on and so forth. But I think I want to end with this week that we had by saying we were certainly not unique. Finally, a conversation, kind of like the pandemic, that was truly everywhere, and we wrestled with it. And I'm proud of what this base did. I'm proud that when every single installation and every single community, and hopefully every single house, was wrestling with how to be better than what we did. And just yesterday, we found out that our efforts for the Pause for Better Race Relations were recognized for an award and a nomination through Air Mobility Command. And when every base is trying to do this, we're so proud of the team for all that they did. And so this is our state of the base at Dover Air Force Base. We stand today united, and we are really focused on what comes next tomorrow. But I know these are extraordinary times, but thank you very much for your attention, and that concludes my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Colonel Jones. One, for the update of what's going on at Dover Air Force Base in the nation. And you said it's extraordinary times, and it is. And that's where extraordinary leadership is really important. So to you and your team, thank you guys for leading in this extraordinary time. So that was pretty awesome to see. Of course, I've been a part of that conversation quite a bit my whole life, so it's kind of awesome to see the dynamics of it. It's now my honor, though, to introduce our senator, or one of our senators here today, U.S. Senator Thomas R. Carper. Tom Carper is the senior senator of Delaware, senior senator from Delaware, He served 5 years as a naval flight officer. We won't hold that against him as airman. He served 3 tours of duty in Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War and continued to serve as a Naval Reserve as a P-3 aircraft mission commander until retiring at the rank of captain in 1991 after 23 years of military service. During almost 40 years of public service, Senator Carper has worked tirelessly to develop practical solutions to real problems. Senator Carper is a ranking member of the Environmental and Public Works Committee and serves as a member of the Committee of Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs and Finance Committee. Please help me welcome our very own Senator Carper.
What is your name? Dawn. Dawn who? Hi, give Dawn a nice round of applause. She's great. She's great. Evans, thanks, buddy. Senator Coons, Lisa Rochester has been to this space many, many times over the years. Has been exposed in some way to the COVID virus. And out of a preponderance of caution, she has just decided she needs to stay. She's out in her car, but she sends her best. And she was there just not that long ago. And is a great supporter of their base. I want to say to Mark Brainerd, president of Deltec, let's put our hands together for everybody here at Deltec for opening up your doors and letting us in. Mark, thank you so much for your leadership. Colonel Jones, I've been coming to these breakfasts for when they were MILCON breakfasts, and I just want to say that's one of the best presentations I've ever heard. Let's give him a nice round of applause for everybody. Very good. I could barely see your wife's lips move when you spoke. So, I don't know how you guys do that, but it's pretty impressive. I love to quote Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill saying about what I should say coming down here today. And one of the things I want to do is just start off by quoting Winston Churchill. Churchill used to say, "The further back we look, the further forward we see." Think about that. The further back we look, the further forward we see. And here in Kent County, Delaware, when we look back on a rich historical tradition and heritage. Just about 2 or 3 miles south of the Dover Air Force Base is really, I call it a plantation, but it's a place where a guy named Dickinson, John Dickinson, grew up. Who was he? He was the pen man of the Revolution. He was the guy who came up with a lot of the writings and ideas that really convinced a people of what was not really a country to stand up and say, to throw off the tyranny of the British throne. John Dickinson, from right here. About 3 miles south of here, say a place called the Golden Fleece Tavern. The Golden Fleece Tavern, on December 7th, most people in this country think of December 7th as Pearl Harbor Day, and it is. But it's also Delaware Day, and we call it Delaware Day because that's the day that Delaware became the first state to ratify our Constitution. And before any other colony did that, we did. And I'd like to say that for one whole week, Delaware was the entire United States of America. It's a pretty good week. And we opened it up, we let some others in, and I think it's turned out okay. We have our ups and downs, but for the most part, it's turned out all right. A guy named Caesar Rodney literally rode his horse right by here, just before July 4, 1776, to go up to Philadelphia to cast a tie-breaking vote in favor of the Declaration of Independence. That's amazing, isn't it? All that history, right here around us. And what they came up with was really an experiment, something that nobody else had ever tried, and that is to be able to elect our leaders and to empower them to make decisions for our country. And one of the things that the founding fathers, the framers, most feared up in Philadelphia when they were meeting debating the Constitution in 1787, they were fearful that, they disagreed about a lot of stuff. The one thing they all agreed on, they didn't want a king. They didn't want a king. They'd been there, done that. They said, no, thank you. And they put in place this intricate system of checks and balances to help make sure that didn't happen. I'm going to quote Churchill again. Churchill also said that democracy is the worst form of government devised by wit of man, except for all the rest. Think about that. This is a hard way to govern. You've given Chris and me and Lisa a great opportunity and great honor to be able to serve you and to try to preserve that foundation on which our country is built. And we thank you for that opportunity. The Constitution of our country calls for us to defend ourselves and to have the wherewithal and the resources that we need to defend ourselves from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I'm sure the founding fathers never imagined we'd be flying around these huge C-5s or C-17s or helicopters or whatever else, C-130s up north. But we do. And we are grateful that we have them. Grateful that we have them. We are facing a different kind of foe today, as you know. My father's generation, World War II, my uncle who died in World War II, my grandmother's a Gold Star mother. They joined together as a country. We joined together as a country with allies across the world, and we took on the fascists and Nazis, the Germans and Japanese who attacked us on Pearl Harbor Day. But we lost hundreds of thousands of men and women in World War II. But we were victorious, and we worked together with our allies. We pulled together. We pulled together as a country. Remarkable. My generation, some of you, General Babel and others, our foe was communism. And our job was to try to stop the spread of communism. That was our mortal enemy. And communism is a failed system. The world knows that. Even the Russians and the Chinese know that. And today we have a different kind of adversary. And that adversary is a pandemic. And the question is, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? And, just like Pearl Harbor, FDR pulled us together as a nation, united us as a country. People didn't want to go to war in World War II in this country. But after that, he pulled us together and said, no, this is the right thing to do. We did, we won. 9/11, we lost more people in that attack than any attack in the history of the country. George W. Bush, former governor, my buddy, pulled us together, united us as a country, and said, let's take these terrorists on around the world, wherever they are. Let's take them on, wipe them out, wipe them out.